These days, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries, and with that, we sent away good jobs and our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make all kinds of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs in towns and cities across the country. And jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.
This is Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to Prop Points. Jeff Erickson here with Nick Whalen. We are with RotoWire.com, and we are here to talk you through really fun weekend coming up here. A fun baseball night, basketball night tonight with the play-in. We're going to talk a little NFL draft. We got to do some draft props. Brandon Kravitz is going to jump on down the progressive guest line and talk a little NBA playoff bets and play-in bets as well. And then we'll finish off by reviewing tonight's baseball slate. Nick, let's start off with what happened in baseball yesterday. You know, it wasn't a huge slate, and yet there was a lot of entertaining stuff going on. But actually, even before we do that, we have a game that's starting in 20 minutes. If you want to jump in on the action, Diamondbacks at Cubs. We'll keep you up to date on this after as it merits during the show. But it's Windmageddon today in Wrigley Field. Wind's supposed to be blowing out 23 miles an hour. Total is up to 11 on this game because of that. There you got Colin Ray, who's a bit of a fly ball pitcher, and Corbin Burns, who's struggled so far and typically struggles against the Cubs as well. So kind of an interesting situation here. I'm looking forward to this game, having this on in the background while we do the show.
Yeah, not a day heavy slate necessarily in baseball today, but this will be a fun one. Arizona, of course, one of the higher scoring teams in baseball so far. Cubs are right up there as well, sitting at 12-9 now on the year, and excited to see what this win brings, Jeff. You said the total's at 11. It's actually up to 11.5 now at the DK Sportsbook.
Wow, and even more.
I know you've kind of poked around the home run market for this game specifically, and I would imagine this is going to be priced in.
Yeah, it's definitely priced in. And when I checked, it was about an hour and a half ago. It might have moved since then. But just as an example, the top two homer odds, the lowest odds, if you will, Eugenio and Suarez and Corbin Carroll were at like plus 160 to homer. As a point of reference, we talked about Tyler Soderstrom yesterday trying to get his ninth homer. He was at plus 400 against the White Sox, against a mediocre pitcher. Wow. So that just tells you what the market is like today. You're going to see it. It's as you saw a lot of over bettors already on this one here. If you're in a league with daily moves in fantasy, bench Corbin Burns today. Do yourself a favor. Yeah, maybe he overcomes those odds. I know he's your ace. You're thinking about it there, but why mess around? You'd probably bench him in Coors Field with the way he's pitching right now. This is basically the same dynamic. If at 11.5 over under, you don't want your starting pitcher going here. So if you're trying to find like maybe better home run odds, maybe you dabble with like Josh Naylor or Ian Happ instead. Plus 350, plus 370 last I saw.
I like that. And like I said, total up to 11.5, 71% of the money, according to the betting splits over at VSiN.com, coming in on that over. Pretty split as far as the money line goes. Minus 112 to Arizona, minus 108 to Chicago. 44% of the handle coming in on Arizona, 52% of the bet. So it should be a very fun one in the afternoon window.
Absolutely. Yankees Rays game 2 is tonight. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we're going to talk about last night first real quick. 6-3 win for the Yanks. Jazz Chisholm gets ejected after a strike 3 call. His replacement turns in a couple big hits there. Yankees, though, they roll over the Rays. Rays, I mean, they had runners on left and right. Will Warren couldn't even get out of the second inning for the Yankees, left with the bases loaded. Brian Yarbrough got out of that, but then the next inning gave up some runs. Rays left 10 runners on base. Clutch hitting by the Yanks, not so clutch hitting by the Rays in this one.
Well, the nice thing, Jeff, is if you had Will Warren going in fantasy, you didn't get the blow up numbers, right? This was a disastrous start in a lot of ways for Will Warren. Only made it through an inning and 2/3, but only was charged with 1 earned run, couple walks, 1 strikeout, right? We're used to, when you see an outing like this, you think Bailey Ober, right? You're like, oh man, 8 or 9 earned runs charged to me. So at least you avoided that if you threw him out there. And obviously the viral moment coming out of this game was Jazz Chisholm getting ejected, controversial strike 3 call. Ended up tweeting from the clubhouse like 10 minutes later. We cannot display that tweet for obvious reasons. If you're watching the show, you've probably already seen it. But kind of couched in that, Jeff, is the fact that Jazz Chisholm's off to a bad start. 7 of 59 at the plate in his last 16 games.
One might say that would torpedo his batting average, given all the attention we got towards his bat earlier in the season. We could. One would. Many are. Ben Rice, on the other hand, is rolling. 4 for 5 yesterday, big 2-run single, hitting 317, 414, 650. This guy has earned a spot higher in the batting order now, batting second frequently for the Yankees. They're getting production from Rice and from Austin Wells, which makes up for the lack of Chisholm production lately. But Junior Caminero on the other side for the Rays homered again. He's up to 5 homers, 288, 324, 545. Maybe not setting the world on fire, but those are very good numbers for a guy with that little experience. You can see why he had the helium in drafts and how setting the foundation for a pretty good career.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And, Rays 10-1 right now to win the AL East. Certainly would not bet on that, but they've been competitive. Yankees still plus 115 as we look at that one. And, I know we want to talk about Giants Phillies last night, Jeff, as well. That was a 6-4 win for Philadelphia. And, Jordan Hicks, a little bit shaky. He's now 1-2 on the year. That ERA now sitting over 6. Christopher Sanchez comes away with a win. He's been strong so far, but still, I think you got to hand it to the San Francisco Giants for the way they've started this season. 13-6. They played a ton of games on the road so far. Willie Adames isn't even hitting well for them. I mean, this is a team that's in 3rd place in its own division and would be in 1st place in any other division right now in Major League Baseball.
Absolutely. Them and the Diamondbacks, they're kind of lamenting their division right now. And they were last year too, for that matter. That's the thing. It's a strong 4-team division out of 5. Just the pace-eating Rockies, they're hanging out at the bottom, as they tend to do. Jordan Hicks was a tale of 2 games. First inning, Jordan Hicks versus the rest of the game. I had the over 5.5 hits. He got to 6, but it took him like the 5th inning to get to that there. The Phillies nearly knocked him out in the 1st inning, and they really stabilized after that. Nick Castellanos left with a hip injury. Pay attention to that. He is expected to play today, but check your lineups accordingly there, especially if you're in Daily Moves for fantasy or like I'm in many leagues where we do lineups Monday through Thursday and then have another Friday through Sunday stretch there too. NFBC, LABR, check your league settings. It's kind of important to do that. One other baseball game I wanted to recap real quick. Tyler Soderstrom and the Swingin' A's. Again, they're crushing home runs, had a bunch of extra base hits against the White Sox, shut out the White Sox, swept them. Soderstrom up to 9 home runs on the season. Brent Rooker and J.J. Bleday also went deep. Pretty fun start for the Athletics. We know they're not going to be able to pitch all that well, but they had a good outing yesterday at least.
I love this team, man. I love watching this team. And, you look at the Athletics right now, they're 9-1 to make the playoffs. I think we all realize there is a cap on the upside for this team. But for the first time in a while, I think the A's are fun to watch, right? I mean, there are 3, 4, 5 hitters in this order that you're excited when they come to the plate. That is not usually how we talk about this franchise. I'm a huge Brent Rooker guy. I'm excited to see what that ballpark in Sacramento kind of does for his numbers this season. And, you look at the upcoming schedule, it's all well and good to sweep the Chicago White Sox. They're at the Brewers for a weekend series. Certainly some winnable games there. After that, they do play the Texas Rangers at home. But you get the White Sox again in Sacramento later this month. So I would not be surprised if the A's could kind of keep this thing going. Again, at some point, I would expect them to regress closer to what we expected. But this is a team that's always in the conversation for, are they going to get to 65, 70 wins? Could they be one of those teams that's in the conversation for the worst record in baseball? Certainly doesn't look like it so far.
No. And, they did beef up their hitting and they had these good young players. I'm all over Rooker too. I'm all over, I've got a lot of Bleday in my lineups. I've got some Soderstrom. It's nice to have that. I think Shea Langoliers has some interest. Going through Lawrence Butler. I haven't even mentioned Lawrence Butler. That's a Whalen guy right there. I mean, you look at his skill set. He should be in your wheelhouse.
No question about that, man. I ended up with very little of Lawrence Butler in fantasy this year. It was kind of going right around that same range as Rooker, and I tended to lean that way. But nice night again last night for Lawrence Butler, 2 of 5 at the plate. He homered, had an RBI. Obviously, somebody who gives you that steals production in fantasy as well.
Indeed. We're going to talk a little bit about the play-ins. 2 games tonight, but first, are you still using your buddy's gut instinct as your betting strategy? Come on, you deserve better. RotoWire has the real tools the pros use: rankings, projections, updates, and data that doesn't sleep. Whether you're making picks, setting your fantasy lineup, or placing bets, our award-winning insights give you the edge you need. Get started today by heading over to RotoWire.com and entering Roto15 at checkout for 15% off any RotoWire product. We got 2 play-in games tonight, Heat Hawks and Mavs Grizz. Let's go quickly, Heat Hawks. Do we need another hero? Is Tyler Hero going to be the spot again?
I think he is, Jeff. I think he is. And, I took the Miami Heat on the money line earlier this week. We'll talk more about this game with Brandon Kravitz later in the show. Heat are now 1-point favorites on the road tonight. Totals up to 221. I think this has to be another Tyler Hero spot for Miami. I would look at the over 25.5 points for Hero. Not going to be as red hot as he was to start last game. 8 of 8 from the field, didn't miss until like midway through the second quarter. But the Hawks, really struggled defensively at times this season. They struggled defensively against the Orlando Magic in round 1 of the play-in. So I think this is another high volume spot. I mean, the spread certainly implies that this should be a close game. We'll see if we finally get, a decent play-in game outside of that Memphis Golden State matchup on Tuesday. But I think this will be close. I think we could see Hero push for 41, 42 minutes. So 25.5 points, taking the over for Tyler Hero. That is my play in addition to Miami on the money line.
I'm looking forward to seeing whether we get another demonstrative Trae Young ejection, despite getting more fouls called in their favor, by the way. But whatever. Moving on. Dallas and Memphis. Big game here. Ja Morant, questionable. Yep. What do you like in this game?
Yeah, that's the big thing. We'll go through these quickly. I mean, Ja didn't practice yesterday. I think he probably ends up playing, but you have to look at the under on Ja's points prop, 26.5. I mean, he's been averaging almost 30 per game over the last 15, but I think there's a real chance he could re-injure that ankle in this game. And with that line of thinking, got to take another look at Desmond Bane. Over 32.5 PRA. Scottie Pippen Jr. over 4.5 assists. That's what I like in that one.
Very good. Coming up next, to bet or not to bet? That is the question. We'll resolve that next on Prop Points here on VSiN.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Prop Points. Jeff Erickson and Nick Whalen here. The NFL Draft is almost here, and every pick matters. And VSiN's breaking it down all from a bettor's perspective. From draft odds to team needs and player breakdowns, you'll find more of our NFL draft analysis on the VSiN Watch app. Hopefully some of this content will help you out as well. We're going to do to bet or not to bet NFL draft style. And let's start off with maybe the most hot button guy in the NFL draft in terms of like, some people are way in on him. Some people are way out on him. There's been a lot of speculation where he goes, and that's Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur Sanders, drafted by the Saints, plus 195. To bet or not to bet, Nick?
Jeff, yeah, it's Shedeur Sanders is about as polarizing as a quarterback prospect as we had in a long time, and I think it makes it really difficult to assess this market. The Saints are the favorite to draft Shedeur Sanders at plus 195, but not far ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers at plus 275, the Browns also at 275, the New York Giants at plus 350. I think the Raiders could potentially be in the mix. It would be a very Raiders pick. At number 6, they're plus 650 to take him. So I actually don't like this one, Jeff. I don't. I think there's reasonable value here. It's not like it's minus 195, but I mean, there are still mixed reports. We're less than a week out from round 1 as to whether the Saints actually are interested in drafting Shedeur Sanders, if he even is on the board at number 9. There are more reports out there that suggest that New Orleans maybe prefers Jackson Dart to Shedeur Sanders should they have the choice. So to me, Sanders is by no means the consensus number 2 quarterback. It kind of felt that way coming into the draft, but I think the further along that we've gotten in this process, there are teams that are in on him, there are teams that are out on him, and I think most of the messaging around the New Orleans Saints is, again, if they have their choice at number 9, I think they would lean Jackson Dart. So again, if Dart's on the board, I think he's the pick for New Orleans, but I would look at the Giants. Obviously they brought him in or went to his private workout, I should say, out in Boulder. Again, they're at plus 350. Raiders would not surprise me. We could also see a total slide here, Jeff. This would also be not something that shocks me. If we're at, pick 20, and even with the Pittsburgh Steelers on the board, if they were to pass on Shedeur Sanders, at that point, we could have multiple teams looking to trade back into round 1. And I think there are plenty of teams, in that 25 to 32 range that would be happy to facilitate.
Yeah, I think it's wild. Sanders could go as low as 3 and as high, or as high as 3 and as low as the second round. I mean, there's a wide range of outcomes, and I love that. I mean, the Aaron Rodgers nonsense yesterday was so predictable yet hilarious. I could go with the Steelers. I could retire. Whatever, dude. I just love it there. We're waiting breathlessly for his announcement there.
Yeah.
Okay, cards on the table. I'm a Bengals fan. I'm annoyed that the Steelers have had so much stability over the years. 3 head coaches in my lifetime. They've never been a joke of a franchise. So I kind of like to see them stewing in their juices a little bit about this quarterback situation. And Sanders has to be part of that calculus.
Yeah, no question. No question. I will say, I don't think the Steelers' draft plans should really impact Aaron Rodgers, though, right? I mean, are you drafting Shedeur Sanders, or are you drafting Jalen Milroe or Tyler Shuck to be your starter right away for a team that has prioritized winning as many games in the short term as possible for as long as I've known the Pittsburgh Steelers? That has been the mantra. So I don't really know what Rodgers is waiting for here. We don't have time to dig into the psychology at play. That would take us like 4 hours. But I think if Aaron Rodgers wants to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he will be their starter next season, regardless of whether they invest in a quarterback in round 1.
For sure. Oh yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It's hard to do succession planning if you're the Steelers. And it can be done. I mean, the Ravens got Lamar where they did. The Niners got Purdy. The Cowboys have gotten 2 late quarterbacks that have worked out. They should be taking a quarterback at some point in the draft, whether it's at 21 or if it's 3rd or 4th round. They don't have a second because they traded for DK Metcalf. But that's going to be one of those hot button teams, hot button guys in Sanders. That's why we try to let's just conflate the two. We'll see what happens there and see what goes. Let's move on to the next one, though. You alluded to it. Jackson Dart. To bet or not to bet? Jackson Dart to be drafted in the top 10.
Yeah, if you had asked me this, as recently as Monday or Tuesday, I would have said, I don't know if I like this. I think it's more likely maybe that a team, trades back and selects him. Could still see New Orleans do that. Maybe he's one of those guys that you did target later in the first round. But for better or for worse, Jeff, I'm buying in on the smoke here with the New Orleans Saints. And I know this number was at 6-1 a week ago. Our guy Adam Shine from Make It Rain, of course, jumped on that, and I kind of wish I would have done the same, because the obvious team here, like we just talked about, is the New Orleans Saints, sitting at 9, and 9 is less than 10, Jeff. So that would mean if the Saints take him at 9, you win this bet at plus 290. So, I think that's ultimately the way that the Saints are leaning for now. We'll see if a team would be willing to jump the Saints for Jackson Dart. That seems a little bit far-fetched to me, but he's the type of quarterback that it feels like you see every few years, right? Where we start the draft process and you're like, okay, he was a good college player. Maybe he'd be a 2nd, 3rd round pick, and these quarterback needy teams get desperate and they push guys up the board who don't necessarily deserve it based on their college career, based on their prospect profile. But you want to have something to show that fan base. You want to have something to show ownership. Like, hey, this is the next guy that we're going to build around. I mean, we saw it with Michael Penix last year. I think Daniel Jones was a similar type of player. You could even go back to Patrick Mahomes. Honestly, it seems crazy to say now, but it's not like Patrick Mahomes was some guaranteed prospect when he was coming out of Texas Tech. So that's kind of the mold if you're looking for, these type of situations in the past. And I'm starting to feel like Jackson Dart is going to go inside the top 10.
Yeah, I think it would be a mistake if that happens. I think he's a system guy. I feel like this is more like the Will Levis buzz or the Malik Willis buzz.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, yeah, these teams need a quarterback. No, he's going to go in the first round, and then he doesn't. The whole Derek Carr news does shape things a lot. I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing these numbers move a little bit, and the Saints need a quarterback. And if they're in on Dart, that makes sense. I get it. Yeah. I think it would be a mistake if they did that there. I think he's a product of Lane Kiffin being good at his job. and not necessarily, there on merit. That's just my take on that there, but we'll see.
Okay.
We'll definitely take a look at that one there. Let's do one more let's do another one here. And let's talk a little wide receiver. Matthew Golden, first wide receiver drafted at plus 150. To bet or not to bet?
Mm-hmm. I get it. Plus 150 to me is not tempting enough to take this bet. I've kind of been saying over the last few weeks, Jeff, that I think Ted McMillan is just being overanalyzed. A guy who had an incredible sophomore season. You're already looking ahead to the next draft when he's going to be eligible, and we've almost had like too much time to evaluate him. And I think it's getting to the point where he's just being picked apart. But again, here, if you're looking to make this bet, the problem for me is that it necessitates Ted McMillan to fall. Like, to me, it's far more likely that a team like, I don't know, the Raiders at 6, the Jets at 7, the Cowboys at 12 pull the trigger on McMillan. I mean, even Jacksonville, there's been some smoke that if they wanted to trade out of 5, maybe Chicago moves up from 10 and Jacksonville takes him there. I'm sure there are teams out there that prefer Matthew Golden to Ted McMillan, but I don't see most of those teams being in a position or being willing to move up to get Matthew Golden. Like, to me, Matthew Golden will probably be drafted about where he should. Like, I would be very surprised if we get to next Thursday night and, a team is, 4, 5, 6 spots higher than we expect on Golden. So I'm not really buying this notion that McMillan is this big time faller. I think somebody inside the top 12 takes him, and I don't think Golden goes ahead of that.
Yeah. I don't think Golden is necessarily Darius Hayward-Bay, but he could be.
No.
He might be. It's just, that speed. We got to go with the speed. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I get that feeling sometimes. All right. We'll talk a little Travion Henderson next, but first, the NFL draft. We're talking about it right now. It starts next Thursday, and VSiN knows every pick matters. Tune in for 2 special live shows breaking down every pick from a betting perspective. First, VSiN Primetime Draft Edition starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, followed by Cashing Out Draft Edition at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Plus, explore our NFL Draft Hub on the VSiN Watch app, featuring exclusive analysis, team needs, and insights. Visit VSiN.com/draft for full coverage and stream it all live on the VSiN Watch app. Travion Henderson, is he going to be drafted in the first round or not? To bet or not to bet at plus 120?
So at plus 120, Jeff, this is just not quite enough value for me to invest. He's right on the borderline, right? If you canvass a bunch of mock drafts, some have him going as high as like 20 to the Denver Broncos. Others, you'll see him 5 to 10 picks into the second round. So there's a pretty wide range, as far as Henderson goes. I know our guy, Joe Bartle, thinks he's going in round 1. Our other guy, John McKechnie, said he doesn't think he's going in round 1. I value both of their opinions. And again, that's kind of what's reflected if you canvass the mock drafts. I think there are some teams, however, at the back end of the first round that could be potential landing spots. Obviously, we expect Genty to be off the board. Amarian Hampton has been a common target in mock drafts for the Denver Broncos. But you look at Kansas City, maybe Washington, Minnesota, Houston. Those are 2 teams that could be looking for succession plans for Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon. My guess is that they probably do that later in the draft, given how much depth that running back there will be in rounds 2, 3, and 4. So at plus 120, this is going to be a pass for me.
I think so too. And I think a lot of it has to do with fit. Like, what type of back are you looking for? Like Ashton Judkins, I mean, he's a bruiser of a back. He's, his teammate, Henderson's teammate. Some teams might want him instead of Henderson. So it could go a couple of different ways. That's one of those things. So I'm intrigued. I think we'll see a ton of set day 2 running backs is where we'll probably see a lot of this here. All right. That's going to wrap up to bet or not to bet. Coming next, Brandon Kravitz joins us on the Progressive Guest Line. This is Prop Points.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Prop Points here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Nick Whalen and Jeff Erickson hanging out with you. We got our friend Brandon Kravitz joining us on the Progressive Guest Line. But first, give you a quick update on what's going on out at the RBC Heritage in Harbortown. Andrew Novak making a big charge on day 2. He is 7 under through 17, co-leader with Justin Thomas. Thomas through 4. He is even, still at 10 under. Scotty Scheffler, 9 under. Mackenzie Hughes and Russell Henley, couple shots back at 8 under. Again, Brandon Kravitz, our props analyst at RotoWire, joining us on the Progressive guest line, helping us break down not only tonight's play-in games, but take a look at some of these playoff series that'll be starting up this weekend. Brandon, let's start with the Eastern Conference. The right to face the Cleveland Cavaliers in round one is on the line. The Miami Heat are 1-point road favorites at DraftKings, total sitting at 221. I know you have a side and you have a prop that you like for this one.
Yeah, and honestly, I bought into a bad number because I took the Hawks right away at -1. They're sitting at +1.5 now. So if you're on the Atlanta side like I am, now's a good time to jump in on that. I just don't buy this Miami team. They started hot, and they do start hot. Then they end up blowing a bunch of games. You're playing against a bunch of young guys in Chicago that just looked shook in that last game. That's not going to happen against Trae Young and the Hawks. Trae is going to keep the Hawks in it all night. And if this game is close in the fourth quarter, you have to fear being on Miami's side. The Heat were 14-28 in clutch situations. Only the Jazz and the Raptors had worse records in those situations. This line suggests that it's going to be a tight game. I understand why money is coming in on Miami, but let's also not forget a 10 seed has never advanced to the playoffs from the play-in. I'll back the Hawks and fade the 10 seed zombie Heat. The prop that I like in this one is Onyeka Okongwu of the Hawks under 10.5 rebounds. This is just a simple look at his history against the Miami Heat. In 5 seasons in the NBA, he's never reached double-digit rebounds against Miami. I assume that that's the Bam Adebayo factor. Okongwu is a nice player, but he can definitely be out physical. This line is just a little bit too high.
Let's look at the other playing game, Mavs, Grizzlies. Grizzlies, obviously, it starts with Ja Morant. Is he going to be able to go? What version of him do we get in this one? What else do you like in this Mavs-Grizzlies game?
I'm going to look the way of Anthony Davis, over 39.5 points plus rebounds. I don't trust either the Mavericks or the Grizzlies. I might end up on Dallas +6, but all I know is that if we're going to get a locked in and engaged version of AD again, he's going to have no trouble clearing this number. He has made a career out of roasting Jaren Jackson Jr., and as impressive as Zach Edey has been at times throughout his rookie campaign, he is not ready for a matchup like this against Anthony Davis. He can get a little lost out there defensively. AD has fallen short of this number in each of his last 4, but with the season on the line and the matchup advantage that he has against Jaren Jackson Jr. and against a rookie like Zach Edey, this feels like the safest play on the board. I'm also going to look, if I am willing to fade Zach Edey that hard or drag his name through the mud, I might as well play some unders on Edey as well. I'm going to parlay together his under on points at 11.5 and rebounds at 12.5, and we get a nice +175 when we do that. I thought Edey was going to struggle against the Warriors, and he did at times. They really picked on him at the end of that game, but he held his own statistically, largely because the Warriors do not have the requisite size to stop him. Well, Dallas does. AD is going to dominate him, and Daniel Gafford is going to as well. This is just too big a moment for a rookie with a limited skill set against one of the biggest front courts in the NBA.
Love your read on the game, Brandon. I'm with you. I think that size for Dallas is going to be a massive, massive issue for Edey and probably Jaren Jackson as well, who I thought really struggled the other night against Golden State. Folks, the NFL Draft is one of the few betting events where research beats reputation, and VSiN Pro helps you cash in. Right now, you can get VSiN Pro access through August 1st for just $59. Full summer of sharp betting insights at half of the regular price. With VSiN Pro, you'll get daily best bets, including sharp insights into NFL draft props, real-time betting splits for both DraftKings and Circa, 24/7 video access on the VSiN Watch app, plus full access to VSiN's analytics, betting trends, and expert breakdowns. From the draft to the Derby and beyond, every sport, every edge, one low price. Sign up now at VSiN.com/subscribe. That's VSIN.com/subscribe. RotoWire's NBA prop analyst, Brandon Kravitz, joining us on the Progressive guest line. You can follow him on Twitter at Brandon Kravitz. Brandon, you also moonlight as a reporter, radio host covering the Orlando Magic down in the Central Florida area. So you are locked in on this round one series. We'll get game one Sunday afternoon in Boston. Celtics are 14-point favorites right now at the DK Sportsbook. If you look at the series pricing, Celtics in 4 is the favorite outcome at plus 105. Celtics in 5, plus 190. We like to keep things above board on this program, Brandon. I have already taken the Celtics to sweep this series. But again, you cover the Orlando Magic for a living, Brandon. So what say you? Can the Magic take at least one game?
I think they can. In fact, my best bet in this series is Magic plus 2.5 games at plus 325. That was the first bet that I made. The Magic match up really well with this Boston Celtics team. And I know how daunting it is to go up against a team as good offensively and defensively as the Boston Celtics. But the truth is the Magic sort of have an antidote to slow them down a little bit over the last 9 games in this series. And that's really dating back to when Paolo Banchero was drafted. So there's a clear line of demarcation there of the Magic becoming a halfway decent basketball team. The Magic are 6-3 straight up against the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are 0-4 when playing in Orlando since that time. And the number one reason why is not only do you have now a player that at his best plays like an all-NBA level player in Paolo Banchero and a pretty good Robin in Franz Wagner, they have the number one 3-point shooting defense in the NBA, not only through accuracy, but also frequency. And we know that that's really how Boston beats you. They're not the most accurate 3-point shooting team. They just shoot you to death when it comes to the frequency in which they shoot threes. Nobody slows you down more than the Orlando Magic. You just know that Boston was looking at the play-ins going, please give us anybody else, because the Magic are going to be like a little gnat in their ear. I don't think the Magic are winning this series, but I do think they take a couple of games and push this to a game 6.
So who is the Pacers player that blew in the Miami Heat player's ear? Now I'm thinking of that. I can't get that out of my head now.
Lance Stevenson.
As far as yes, thank you. That's I can't get that out of my head there now a little bit there. Injury wise, how are we doing with the Magic here? I know they've had some injuries over the course of the season. Corey Joseph's been hurt for a little bit there. Cole Anthony's been hurt a little bit here and there. Obviously, Banchero had his long stretch. Everybody healthy going into this one?
Everybody would be a stretch. Really, the big ones are Mo Wagner's done for the season. He tore his ACL. That happened a while ago. Jalen Suggs hasn't played since January. They could really use him in a series like this where you want to lock down the Celtics on their perimeter. But those guys are out. But they've also been dealing with that for the last couple of months. As far as new injuries go, the Magic have a completely clean bill of health.
All right, Brandon, let's move over to Bucks Pacers. We'll get game 1 of that series on Saturday. Bucks have now settled in at plus 135 to win the series in light of yesterday's news on Damian Lillard. He, of course, will not play in game 1. Get the sense that they're going to take it game to game after that. Pacers are 5.5-point home favorites for that game 1. Would you consider a little sprinkle on Milwaukee to win this series? Am I over optimistic on this version of the Bucks with Damian Lillard's status unknown?
I think probably a little bit. I would tend to lean Indiana, but there's no doubt that Milwaukee matches up well with this basketball team. And the Bucks did finish hot. They finished on an 8-game winning streak, a little bit fraudulent. I mean, they beat teams like the Suns, the Sixers, the Heat without Tyler Hero, the Pelicans, a Detroit team that mailed it in. But I do think they match up well. Offensive efficiency, it's going to be an even split. And the Milwaukee Bucks are the better defensive team. I think the best bet in this series is that it just goes to 7. I don't even care who wins. Just get me to a 7th game at plus 220. That feels like the best bet.
Hey, no taking shots at that Pelicans team, Brandon. That team was playing hard down the stretch. All right, you don't just walk into Smoothie King Center and get a win late in the season. All right, we got about 30 seconds for this one, Brandon. So we'll go quick. Just tell me who's winning this Clippers-Nuggets series. It's minus 110 both ways at DraftKings.
I mean, at this point, the Clippers to win the series narrative has been pushed pretty hard on outlets like this, so I probably don't need to add to that agenda. The price has been, at least the value of it has been zapped out. I got it at plus 135 a week ago. It's at minus 110 now. I do like the Clippers to win this series. I already bet it to happen that way. We are a little too pessimistic on the best player in the world. I will say that. Fading Nikola Jokic this hard and this confidently probably doesn't end well, but I do like the Clippers overall. I think they're a better basketball team, and they're just a force defensively.
There we have it. Brandon Kravitz, everybody, check him out over on RotoWire.com. Always appreciate him stopping by. Jeff Erickson's best bets in the MLB coming up next on Prop Point.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here on Prop Points on VSiN, Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson here with you. Time to talk a little baseball. We got ourselves a hefty night slate in MLB tonight, Jeff. Just one game ongoing right now. That is Diamondbacks Cubs, still 0-0 as we head to the bottom of the second. Hit on the board for the Diamondbacks, a couple for the Cubs, but no damage quite yet. Let's start with the Dodgers and the Rangers, Jeff. I know you have a whole slew of best bets that you want to get out there for this slate. We got Yoshi Yamamoto going up against Jacob deGrom, and Jacob deGrom, about as polarizing as it gets for some in the fantasy baseball space, Jeff. You know I was out. You know I don't take risks on 38-year-old pitchers who've had the injury history that he has. Let's start with deGrom before we get into the best bet. But what have you seen from him so far? How has he looked compared to the Jacob deGrom that we know of old?
You know, it's a good question. His opening day was fine. Last two starts, not so great. 4 home runs allowed in his last two starts. His K percentage is down to 20.6%. That's well below even where he was the year he got hurt in 2022 or in 2023. The swing and miss is still there, 16.1%, below his peak, above everybody else's average, though. So he's kind of polarizing. I wanted to get some deGrom in my leagues. I ended up getting him in 2 leagues. One, my AL only home league, where we don't have strikeouts, so it's kind of not so smart of me to kind of be the league where I do that. But this is the best pitching matchup on tonight's slate, though, as at least in terms of name. I think deGrom is not quite all the way back yet, and this is a tough one for him to get all the way back against this Dodgers lineup, obviously.
Yeah, you're right about that. Dodgers minus 142 on the money line. Total in this game sitting at 8. I know you're looking at playing the Dodgers, and you have a variation as well for the Rangers. So what do you like here?
So Yamamoto has been elite so far. 123 ERA, 0.91 WHIP, 28 strikeouts, 28 to 7 K to walk in 22 innings, 33.7 K percentage there. Texas struggles a little bit against right-handers. WRC plus 24th in the league at 86. So I like going betting under on the Rangers runs, under 1.5 runs the first 5 innings. You get that at plus 100. I like the Dodgers on the run line, minus 1.5 at plus 120 as well. May talk about something about the money line a little bit later as well.
Let's move over to the Giants and the Angels. This one in LA, San Francisco, minus 162 on the money line. Total sitting at 8. Angels need a win, man. Now, we talked about this Giants team earlier in the show, 3rd in their own division, despite getting off to a great start. 4 straight losses for the Angels, coming off of a sweep at the hands of the Texas Rangers. I know you have a play on the total here at 8.
Yeah, I do. First of all, the Angels bats, as you alluded to, have cooled off, and they're not a good on-base team to begin with there. And I think that's one of their big problems. They strike out 24.3% of the time against right-handed pitchers. The Giants strike out 27.8% of the time against left-handed pitchers. You would think they have kind of a righty-heavy lineup. They'd be better against lefties, but that has not been the case so far this year. If you're looking for one particular bad matchup, Jorge Soler struck out 9 times in 14 at-bats against Logan Webb. All of this pointing a little bit towards the under. I know this is always priced in, but I'm going to kind of go that way anyhow. Minus 112 on the under 8 runs on this one here. Wish I had the hook. Don't have it, but we'll take the under anyhow, and then we get a little bit of a push otherwise if it's like 5-3 or something of that nature.
Out the NL East, we have the Miami Marlins heading up to Philadelphia tonight. Philly's big favorites on the money line, minus 218. Low total here at 7.5. It's Sandy Alcantara going up against Zach Wheeler. And I know you're looking at Wheeler specifically, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm looking at Wheeler. I'm looking, and in part because I'm looking at Alcantara. And Alcantara isn't quite all the way back. He's never been a huge K guy to begin with there. but his K percentage is down to 19.0%. Used to his 23.4 pre-injury. So that's even down, at least from his peak. His walk percentage is up to 12.7%. That's the thing that's way up. And that's something that's normal. That happens with players coming back from various forms of Tommy John surgery. You want to get them in year 2, or at least halfway through the season. It's the guy that's going to be under the microscope all season long because we expect the Marlins to trade Alcantara by the trade deadline. I think he'll get better as the season goes on, but I don't think he gets well against the Phillies here. And in particular, he's had a tough record against the Phillies. And 250 at-bats against these current Phillies, projected to be in their lineup tonight. They're hitting 304 batting average, 349 on base, 467 slug. So it's a huge number for the money line on the Phillies. So I think instead, let's go with a little bit of value. Let's go with Zach Wheeler instead at -110 to record that win.
All right. I like it a lot. Picking up some value there with Zach Wheeler. The 15-4 San Diego Padres, Jeff, going up against the Houston Astros tonight. Houston -155 on the money line. Total sitting at 9. This is Kyle Hart going up against Ryan Gusto. I've seen some good, some bad so far from Hart. Gusto, somebody converting from the bullpen. So kind of a shaky pitching matchup here, Jeff. How do you attack this game?
Yeah, it is. And I threw the records in the notes here today just to point out that, Padres 50-4, Astros 8-10, yet Houston a pretty healthy size favorite at -155. And that has to do with the pitching matchup and venue. Padres 12-1 at home. They finally lost at home on Tuesday, but only 3-3 on the road. Couple of one of those series was at the Cubs. So I'll kind of take that for with a little bit of the grain of salt. Kyle Hart pitching for the Padres. Brilliant in 2 home starts. Couldn't get out of the first against the Cubs. Houston, on the other hand, though, they've been horrible against left-handed pitching so far. Hitting 129, 229, 194. That's good for a 30 WRC plus against lefties. The only caveat there is they've only faced 71, they've only had 71 plate appearances against lefties. Somehow they're avoiding almost all left-handed pitchers so far, which is wild because you think with Yordan Alvarez being their best hitter, left-handed hitter, teams would want to get those lefties in against the Astros, but that hasn't been the case so far. I think this is a good opportunity to kind of take an advantage of a good price for the Padres. I think they're the better team. You get them at +130. I understand they haven't been as strong on the road and they don't have a great starting pitcher. Gusto's a bit of an unknown. He's had one major league start. He's relieved as well. He was going to make the last start of the year last year. The game got rained out against the Nationals. So he only went 4 innings in his first start. So that means that bullpen is going to have to throw a lot of innings tonight, probably. Gusto's got a plus changeup, average fastball. I think the Padres are going to get their share of runs scored against them. The total, so does the books because the total's at 9. Let's go ahead and take that San Diego money line at +130.
To move over to the Mariners and the Blue Jays, Toronto a slight favorite on the money line, -118. This is Brian Wu going up against Bowden Francis. And it's another game, Jeff, where I know you have a play on the total. And I'm just going to mention this, just totally offhanded for no reason at all. Cal Raleigh has 6 home runs in his last 6 games, Jeff.
Yeah, I've heard that he's on fire right now. The Mariners are a strange team. We've complained about them building their roster, their lineup, and it's true. They should have done more this offseason. But on the road, they are one of the best hitting teams in baseball. Maybe it's just because they were playing in Cincinnati this weekend, Great American Small Park, but they're +1. They have a 144 WRC plus on the road, only 97 at home. They're facing a pitcher in Bowden Francis that has given up 4 homers to lefties so far, left in a little too long in his last start. Good pitcher, but this total is at 8. I think it's a little too low. That's my best bet, but sprinkle in a little Cal Raleigh at +245. If you want to get a little chancy, maybe even a Luke Raley over at +400. Get those left-handed batters because all 4 home runs by Francis given up 2 left-handed batters. Brian Wu, on the other hand, good pitcher. He's also been a little worse on the road this year and in last year as well. K rate, ERA, whip, home runs per 9, all higher on the road.
All right. We love it. Some excellent plays from Jeff Erickson for tonight's Major League Baseball slate. I know you're also taking a look at the Rays first 5 -115 at home tonight against the Yankees. This brings us to our G-Bank Best Bets of the Night, Jeff. They're brought to you by G-Bank, the official bank of VSiN, and G-Bank is up in the ante with up to a $750 bonus if you're a new G-Bank Visa Signature Card customer. New customers who spend $1,000 on eligible purchases within 90 days from opening their account get a $250 bonus. If you spend $50K on gaming and sports app loads within 30 days, you'll receive another $500 bonus, so potentially $750 in bonuses heading your way. You can apply now at vsin.com/gbank. That's vsin.com/gbank. Subject to credit approval, terms and conditions apply. Your best bet tonight, Jeff.
Real quick before best bet, update on Winmageddon and Wrigley, 2-0 Cubs. Carson Kelly just homered. First, we saw another ball get to the warning track on that. Best bet's going to be the Dodgers money line minus 142. Kind of laid out the reasons why I love Yamamoto. I'm not so sold on Jacob deGrom yet.
Okay, there we have it. I'm going back to the NBA. Desmond Bane over 32.5 points, rebounds, assists. Ja Morant under 26.5 points. Just fading Ja Morant with that ankle, man. I hope he pulls through. I hope he's able to look like himself, but I think there's too much risk to invest in Morant. And look, if we don't like Morant, I think Bane's got to pick up the slack. Give me the Dallas Mavericks, by the way, to cover the 6 tonight in Memphis. That's going to wrap it for us here on Prop Points. Make sure you keep it locked right here on VSiN. Make It Rain with Adam Shine coming up next. Justin Termine is going to stop by to give his preview of the NBA playoffs.